right. Well, Dr. Ken, thank you for being here today. So, for those of you who don't know, Ken Cuccinelli recently acted as the Attorney General for the state of Virginia, and then he joined the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, as the director of USCIS, and then was named deputy director for the Department of Homeland Security. Ken, would you want to introduce yourself?
Well, it's good to see you again. I'm a proud Virginian, and was Virginia's Attorney General, as you noted. Been practicing law 30 years, but I got an engineering degree first, and I tell people that I think like an engineer, not so much like a lawyer. So the other thing I tell people is that I was an engineer before I went to the dark side and went to law school. But I went to a law school in the University of Chicago model. I went to now Antonin Scalia, then George Mason School of Law and Economics,
Mhm.
which to Chicago type should sound pretty familiar. So I enjoyed my spring fellowship up there, where we got
That's
to meet
right.
and discuss things like national debt and immigration and a few other items, not of trivial importance. So
Mhm.
it's good to be back with you again.
Yeah, so Ken went to the University of Chicago, the place, the headquarters of the Chicago Thinker, and me and the Thinker members had the opportunity to meet with him and to talk to him about immigration, about national security, and many other topics. And we thought he'd be the perfect first guest for our program, right? So, Ken, you've been engaged with immigration for uh, many years now, right? As USCIS and then Deputy Secretary. What were a few of the key milestones in your career that shape how you view immigration?
Well, I'm a policy geek, and setting aside the political view of America first, I believe governments at every level should consider the citizens they represent first. So I'm a populist in the sense that I believe, and by the way, I was a state legislator before I was attorney
That's
general
right, yeah.
for 8 years. So
Virginia Senate, right?
correct.
Yes.
And I have long believed that we shouldn't be legislating on behalf of interest groups or the big donors, et cetera. We should be legislating on behalf of ordinary Americans. And in the
Mhm.
state Senate, that meant my fellow Virginians. When I worked in the federal government, that meant representing all Americans. And immigration is one of those areas that we are a nation of immigrants. We've benefited tremendously from that. I'm Italian Irish. I tell people I look Italian, I act Irish, and I eat Italian, I drink Irish. But
Perfect.
there are boundaries to that. And also, when we had a massive unsettled western half of our country, it was the inflow of immigrants who populated that and tamed the West, if you will. Well, that's not where we are anymore. People aren't coming here literally looking to go to the pioneering edge of the civilized world and
Mhm.
to carve out space for their family. Think about what that took. That's a really courageous commitment by whole families.
Mhm.
Now people come to America, an already developed first world country with a massive welfare system. Let's not kid ourselves. And paid for education up through high school and so forth, and lots of help at the collegiate level, even. So we're a different world. We're a different country than we have been through some of our history, and we have our own poor people, and we have lots of them. And if you let in enormous numbers of unskilled competitors to the bottom end of your domestic economic scale, what do you do? Well, we're Chicago, right? I mean, this is simple law and
Yeah.
economics. It's the laws of supply and demand for labor. You hold down the wages of the lower end of the economic scale. In other words, you hurt American poor people. And some of those jobs get occupied by non-American citizens. And again, some of that may be acceptable on a policy basis, but we've gotten well out of control during my lifetime in terms of the people overstaying their visas illegally and flooding across the border in the last, really, that's a phenomenon more of this century than of the 20th century. So,
Hmm.
and all of that hurts our poor people. Um, then you get to things like H-1Bs and the made-up OPT program. And for those listening who don't know, those are targeting supposedly high-tech visas. They tend to end up being used for IT networking,
Mm.
which, you know, I can't do it, but I'm sure I could train to do it. It's not a special or unique skill, which is how the H-1Bs were sold. OPT um, is literally made up. It doesn't exist in statute, and it was intended to sort of extend high tech visas. And when I say high tech, that's just what the people who want this say.
That's right. Yeah.
It doesn't really mean high tech. Um, and it is hiring people out of college. Amazingly, the OPT arrangement, those folks are not considered permanent residents. So neither they nor the companies that hire them pay Social Security or Medicare taxes. So if you're a
Mm.
company, you can actually hire these foreign workers for the same job as an American and pay 15% less in costs. We're literally subsidizing them to not hire Americans. It's insane. And it's that, again, I don't want America to stop being the most generous immigration country in the world, which we are.
Uh-huh.
I'm perfectly happy with that. What I want to see is it rationalized to serve American interests and not just be a race for whoever can break the most laws and get across the border, whether it's legal or illegal. And I want to reward the people that play by the rules. I want to celebrate the people that play by the rules. And I want to send home every single person who breaks our laws in trying to come in this country. Um, that's how I came to this. And on my policy side, I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America. Immigration
Hmm.
and border security are one of our main foci. And I've written extensively on this, and people can see some of what I've written at the Center for Renewing America website. I'd urge you to go and pull down some of the policy material there. And it's a subject of great policy interest to me because I believe it has a great deal of impact on America's stability as well as the prospects for Americans now and long into the future. So that's a lot to answer your question with, but there's a
Yeah.
lot there.
No, but there's a lot to play with in that answer. I appreciate it. Yeah. So you touched a little bit on illegal immigration and how those who broke the law should go back and should not have a place to stay. And what I also think is interesting is your role in USCIS, which when we were talking at U Chicago, you said one of the most, you had obviously various honors in your life, but you had great pleasure rewarding those
Yeah,
who played by the rules, who came to the country and wanted to be an American. You had great pleasure giving those people the opportunity to stay in
right.
America if they wish to become good citizens, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was so just for viewers,
of course,
USCIS is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. The way I describe it to people is it's the legal immigration agency. I mean, especially if you're watching the news today, you've heard of ICE. You've heard of CBP and the Border Patrol. Those are the other two immigration agencies. They all used to be in one when it was INS, probably before you were even born. But as part of the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, they broke it up into pieces, which I think was a terrible mistake. It was certainly inefficient. But here we are. And as the head of that agency, I literally got to swear in new citizens um, regularly, and it's an
yeah,
incredibly moving experience. And every natural born American maybe on paper we know how blessed we are, but it's worth going to one of these ceremonies and seeing how moving it is for other people. And they happen all over the country. They're happening all the time, and they're easy to find. Especially if you're in a big town like Chicago,
Yeah.
you've got them going on all the time.
No, that's great. I mean, I myself, I'm an immigrant. I'm here in a student visa, as you may well just know. I
Right.
came from Brazil, trying to, come to America, play by the rules, do my part, and maybe I'll get to one of those ceremonies down the line. I hope I
That
do.
would be
Um,
great.
yeah, I mean, I'd be really honored. So what I wanted to understand more from you, how do you balance that out? How do you filter those people like that come here in a student visa and want to be American and want to play by the rules and want to get a job through the H-1B program or the OPT program, which, as you said,
Right.
is legally complicated.
Yeah.
How do you feel that those people out against the people that are crossing the border in boats and
So,
yeah,
part of the reason, I do interviews all the time, as you might imagine. Most recently, I
yeah,
was on with Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and he likes to say, look, it isn't possible to remove everybody who's here illegally. And I don't accept that premise. I just don't accept it. And because the minute you accept it, you start carving out exceptions.
uh-huh,
Well, okay, we'll remove everybody except and accept and accept and accept. And then there's no difference between the people who play by the rules and the people who don't. One way I would differentiate between them is I wouldn't move 1 inch or lift one finger to help people who are trying to create legalized pathways out of their illegal entry before
uh-huh,
we cure the backlog of people playing by the rules.
okay,
And so let's move them along. Now, some of them are going to get negative decisions, but let's get them their decision. Let's not make them wait forever. And for those who are going to proceed onto a path, say to a green card or citizenship or what have you, God bless them. They'll obviously be happy with that.
mhm,
And just for playing by the rules, they deserve to move to the front of the line, not the other way around. The Biden administration moved the people who cheated to the front of the line. And that's not fair to the people who do what we ask them to do, and that's play by the rules.
uh-huh, yeah,
I
it's
will
fair enough.
also say, in my experience, relatively recently sworn in, meaning first generation Americans, agree with that principle. They
Yeah,
are they are some of the most uh,
patriotic.
upset. Well, they're certainly some of the most patriotic, but they're
Uh,
also some of the people most upset about people jumping the line.
yeah,
They played by
I
the
mean,
rules. They paid an immigration attorney. They waited interminable amounts of time, and they see these other people cheat and get rewarded for it, and it drives them crazy.
yeah, I mean, we saw a huge jump in the Latino population voting way more red this time,
Yep.
right? In the
Yep.
last year's election. I guess that explains a little bit of what
Well,
happened.
yeah, part of it is just sort of the racism of the left. They put everybody in a group and they say this group thinks this. Black people are
Mhm.
this. Hispanic people are this. I mean, could there be a more racist approach to humanity? And yet that's what they do. And of course, so much of the media is very left. They just accept those premises. Those are their starting assumptions. They don't even question them. They don't even think about it. They don't even realize that they're racists and ethnicists by just presuming that people will think like little petty automatons
Uh,
um, of their proletariat, and people don't. And America encourages people to be individualists and to think for themselves. And um, do we tend to act like people who are like us? Yeah, we do. But what does that mean? Is skin color is one thing. I'm Irish
yeah,
Italian, that's another. I'm from Virginia, not California, et cetera. I'm thin, not fat. I mean, there's a million ways
million
to
differences. Yeah,
divide people up.
yeah,
And there are all sorts of different similarities that show similar voting patterns.
mhm,
But to assume that people will ignore their own decisions, like I'm not saying that correctly. To assume that people will not think for themselves, that they're too dumb to make their own decisions, is
Mhm.
one of the most demeaning presumptions one human being can have about another. And yet, all of the political left, most of the media, all of entertainment world, they all start with that incredibly offensive presumption. And when it's applied to people based on their race or ethnicity, it's racist.
Uh, it's fair enough. Yeah. Something we touched a little bit upon that, like first generation Americans recently, people that have been recently sworn in as citizens of the United States, they're really patriotic. They're really
No.
angry at people that jump the line. Uh, in terms of again filtering out those people that want to become American and that want to play by the rules. Something I keep getting myself keep returning to is what Teddy Roosevelt used to say, and what Reagan kind of also used to say, is that people come here, they want to be an American, they should embrace American values and embrace American culture and embrace American history and our language. Our language is a big thing, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm from Brazil. I crossed the customs in the airport many times, and the guards were speaking Spanish because they assumed they didn't speak English. So how do you see that assimilation, that wish to incorporate American culture and values playing out in legal immigration?
So, one of the great weaknesses of our system, our law says that if you don't accept our values, you don't get to immigrate here.
Mm,
That's in the law. Well, what does that mean? Well, it should at least mean that you agree that everybody should be able to worship as they see fit, that you are willing to tolerate people's opinions who differ from your own because they have the freedom to express them. You know, I'm I'm all still in just the First Amendment, right?
yeah.
But is that exactly consistent, say, with people who believe Sharia law should govern America? No, it isn't.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That doesn't mean people can't come here from Muslim countries, but you can't hold that view that this should be a Sharia law nation and comply with the law of the United States of holding values consistent with America's. And we really don't police that. And so language is one people go to quite regularly. And we do
Mhm.
have English testing as part of the citizenship process. It's not particularly rigorous, but it is there, and there is some requirement to, be able to communicate and understand English. Um, I personally, having run the agency that manages that, I don't think we test that very well. I don't think we
Uh-huh.
carry off that requirement very well, but it is there.
It's
And we
there.
do
Okay.
it, we do attempt to enforce it. So, but that's sort of the most overt aspect of assimilation that people think of. They think of language. But that isn't,
Mm,
uh, yes, we're an English speaking nation, but what really sets America apart is our foundational principles.
yeah.
And, how do you test for a commitment to freedom of speech and worship and so forth? And there are people on the left who wouldn't even be supportive of requiring people to support the Second Amendment.
Uh-huh. That's right.
But
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to own a gun, but you have to accept that we all have the right, law-abiding citizens, to do that. And so on right through the Constitution. And we don't have a particularly good process for that. That's one. So we really haven't done a particularly good job of ensuring assimilation as part of immigration, as part of legal immigration. By
Mhm.
definition, it's not happening with illegal immigration because
Uh-huh.
we aren't even given the choice.
You don't
It-
even get to test their English.
right,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
right. So, but I also think, and we saw Trump talk about this in his first term, we also saw and we've seen other countries like Australia as the model from 30 years ago, where they redid their immigration system to primarily focus on facilitating economic needs and economic growth and jobs. America's numerically is a chain migration system, and that doesn't serve America. It serves people who can get a hook here.
What do you
And
mean chain migration?
chain migration, I bring my brother, I bring my aunt, I
Oh,
bring
of course, yeah,
grandpa,
yeah.
I bring, it's one thing to bring your children, your minor children. That's a different story. Nuclear family,
Uh-huh.
no problem there. But when one person is simply used to bring many others without any consideration of the relevance to the United States of America, that's not a good system, and that's the system we have right now. So I hope we'll see Trump and Congress turn their attention to what is in this country called immigration reform and reform legal immigration now that the border is relatively secure. Deportations are not proceeding particularly quickly, despite all the
Yeah.
news and the hue and the cry
And we'll get to that in a second, yeah.
yeah, and then how they're in the news all the time. The numbers still aren't particularly high. But I think they're in a political place where they can start to try to attack what is agreed almost universally to be a system that doesn't work for America. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders might have a different end place than I might have, but or Donald
Yeah,
Trump,
of
what
course.
have you. But
Mhm.
at least we agree that what we have now doesn't work right. So we should at least start trying to carve away at the things that don't work and try to improve them.
Fair enough. Yeah. In terms of again, kind of now diving into more of the administration's policies, I wanted to touch a bit on what happened with Harvard, which was a case that, me being as a college in a college, as a college student, caught a lot of my attention and a lot of people's attention in the media and was a big controversy. So uh, I understand you're saying, and with your prior experience, that you would want to uh, help legal migrants to assimilate and to eventually carve their way into citizenship. How I'm trying to understand Trump's rationale into barring Harvard from enrolling international students and stopping current students from continual enrollment. What do you think was the thought process behind that, if you were to take a wild guess?
Well, first and foremost, I think that he saw Harvard and Columbia and especially in the Ivies and near Ivies,
Mhm.
um, as being tolerant of anti-Semitism to the point of encouraging it,
Uh,
including, by the way, violence and violations of law, destruction of property, taking over of property, um, that included intimidation and threats that are extremely discriminatory, extremely dangerous, frankly, and totally un-American. And he's willing to bring the hammer down on universities that really don't do the basics to protect every student and make sure every student doesn't feel threatened just to go to class. I mean, the most basic civil right is the right to be safe.
uh,
Um, to feel
yeah,
safe is appropriate. I hate to rely on anything that includes the word feel
yeah,
because it's so subjective. But I mean, we all saw the videos of Jewish students not being allowed to get to class, being holed up in libraries and other buildings. And I mean, there's no question that was intended to intimidate, intended to harass, intended to scare people with threats of violence without getting in as much trouble as you'd get in if you committed violence. And
uh-huh,
Harvard was very tolerant of it all. They treated it like that's a legitimate form of protest, and it's not. And Donald Trump made it very clear when he was running for office, I'm going to do this. So what he's doing with Harvard shouldn't surprise anybody.
hmm,
God bless him for it. I have no qualms with any of that. And I don't think the administration has gone overboard on that front. There are people worried they'll go overboard, but they certainly haven't yet.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So basically, then the Harvard situation was a way to press down on Harvard for issues with anti-Semitism and the protests and so on. How does this connect with you might disagree with me, but I thought a lot of smart people come from around the world to the university, to the top universities of the U.S. to uh, to stay in the U.S. or even to go back to their own country. But the U.S. for a long time has been like a magnet of really smart people, really entrepreneurial people that want to come or enjoy their a good education. And a lot of other universities in other countries, a lot of British universities, or even Brazilian universities for that matter, around the world have offered Harvard students or top institutions in the US, students in those institutions in the US, the ability to transfer to another country so they could feel safer. So I completely understand your point of pressing down on Harvard and other top institutions, but how do you feel that that pressing down relates to disincentivizing bright students from coming to the US for fear?
Well, the people who are really the problem in this situation, it's not academic, right? I mean, this is from the river to the sea. We all know
Yeah.
that's a terrorist chant to threaten and scare people. And ultimately, out over time, many of those people have every intention of slaughtering to death, as they did on October 7th, 2023 in Israel, every man, woman, and child who doesn't agree with them.
Hmm.
And we should not be wasting F1 visas on people like that. If they want to study, get a degree in Western civilization, I'd love to have them. I have a funny feeling that's not what they're interested in.
Yeah,
And but we are foolish and unwise to support our enemies, and they are all of our enemies. It isn't just Jewish students. The
yeah,
Jewish students are just first. Anybody who believes that and is willing to be violent and threatening in that manner is going to do it to the rest of us, whether it's 5 years from now, 100 years from now, or 1,000 years from now. And that shouldn't matter to us. We should be trying to steer the world in a better direction than that. And Donald Trump is doing that.
yeah.
By the way, at the same time, doing more to advance peace in the Middle East
That's right. Yeah.
than really any
Iran,
modern
right?
leader ever has.
Yeah, I mean, Iran crisis was promptly shut down after a few days of
Right.
confusion, and yeah, it's interesting point. Yeah,
Well, he also in his first term, he had
the Abraham
he
Accords.
achieved
Yeah,
three Abraham Accords, three Middle
that's
Eastern
right. Yeah,
peace accords. My joke has continually been, how many Middle East peace agreements does Donald Trump need to get the Nobel Peace Prize? Answer, one more than he gets. So, because they'll just never give it to him.
it's
But
fair
that's
enough.
because it's Donald Trump, not because he's not advancing the cause of peace in the Middle East.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I had another question, some a little related to that point of Donald Trump, the persona of Donald Trump, and that is, Obama has carried out more deportations in
Yeah.
his term than than Trump currently has.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, why do you think that people are more upset with Trump and more enraged with Trump than they were with Obama back in his administration? Is it because of the media? Is it become because of the fast pace? What do you think that is?
So I think there's a few reasons. First of all, because it was Obama and not Trump, nobody made a big deal of it.
Mm,
Um, and whenever Obama drew attention to it, he was trying to sort of show off his centrist credentials. Um, but it was never, the media is left. The institutions that attack are on the left. Well, they weren't going to attack Barack Obama.
mm,
They just weren't going to do it, and they didn't do it. You remember the kids in cages? Those were bought and begun to be used under President Barack Obama. And And frankly, ICE just went about its business. By the way, among those who didn't attack with the Obama administration were judges.
Uh-huh.
And whereas judges are doing everything they can, not all judges, just the left-wing activists, to get in Trump's way. So, yes, President Trump's deportation numbers really are not that high. They certainly are not on track to achieve the goals that he has said he has. Part of the reason is they frankly have more work to do at DHS to build
Mhm.
out the pipeline to make this happen more effectively. But they are also, regardless of how good a job they did on the management side, they are still facing an unprecedented assault from the judiciary,
Mhm.
and that's a real thing. And so, if Republicans aren't committed to carrying this forward into the next presidency and the one after that, and essentially making it the new normal, then it isn't going to happen.
Mhm. Do you think there's any way that he can continue to carry out the agenda without being being reprehended by the judges and by the opposition? Is there any
Well,
real possibility to that,
you
or?
know, if you accept that you win some, you lose some, um, then the ruling by the Supreme Court that judges can't just willy-nilly impose injunctions while litigation is pending, um, means they get a fair shot, they being the administration, get a fair shot to make their case before any of the work they're doing is impeded. And they
Mhm.
believe they're within the boundaries of the law. Overwhelmingly, I don't think there are many situations where the case can be made that they're not within the boundaries of the law. And so I think they're going to prevail in most of these cases. That's going to
Yeah.
move things along very substantially. And even where they lose, for example, they lost on in the first term on holding back funding from sanctuary cities and states.
Okay.
Well, if Congress passes a budget in the next 2 months that allows them to do that,
Mhm.
then that ruling will have clarified the political action necessary to give that power to the president, and Congress can do that. And the court made it clear Congress can do that.
Yeah.
So even by losing, I'm not saying he's winning by losing in that one, but they certainly clarify the course that's needed. And now you have a Republican Congress who really doesn't have a good excuse when they pass their first budget, not to give the president that authority.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it happens.
Speaking of budget, the one big beautiful bill that was passed contains like a huge increase in budget for ICE and for DHS. And I remember when you were in Chicago, you said something I thought was really interesting. You said that Trump was going to be really disappointed with his own results, that he was not going to be able to deport as many people as possible because of costs and logistics, right?
Right.
So I was thinking like with the new bill, with the new funding that goes to ICE and DHS, do you think that he's closer to achieving that goal? Like, and if he is,
Well, he
how
he
closer?
certainly, money isn't the impediment now, but as we talked about in Chicago, and as I'll share with the people watching us, the Department of Homeland Security should have had a whole series of contingent contracts already in place that are
Mm,
triggered by the availability of that money to find more of the people, 1.5 million almost people who already have removal orders, to expand detention capacity all over the country. You don't just do that in individual places. And to rent the transportation facilities like airplanes, like
yeah.
150 of them, to fly people back home all over the world. Um,
Mm,
and to start building those out on a permanent basis. Alligator Alcatraz is getting a lot of attention, and it's kind
yeah,
of
that's
amusing, which
right.
is why it's getting the attention. But really, what you need is a formula that you can duplicate all over the country on a permanent basis. I have no problem with people living in tents for the duration of their detention. That shouldn't be a big deal because the detention shouldn't take very long. And by the way, that's a deterrent anyway. I'm not suggesting anybody should be treated without basic human dignity. But that
course, yeah.
doesn't mean we have to build palatial buildings or even build buildings at all. We just need to have processing centers that treat people respectfully, account for their health and food needs, for example, and move them through as quickly as we can. That means using some of that money to hire 5 times as many judges as we have
Mhm.
now. They only have 700 some odd judges. There are
Yeah.
20,000 plus retired state judges, just state judges, all over the country today, right now, as you and I speak. And these
Mhm.
cases are done all over the country. None of those judges, former judges, would even have to move. They could be hired for just a few years. They already know how to be judges. All they need to do is learn Title VIII. It's the same thing for hiring ICE agents. ICE agents conduct themselves as police officers. They're really national security agents, but their tactics are police tactics.
Training is the same.
The training is the same. All they need is a 1 week briefing on Title VIII, which is the title of the U.S. code that involves immigration law, so that they
Okay.
know their authorities. And same thing with judges. But these things aren't, you're not seeing them happen, right? And you're not seeing them happen because DHS didn't prepare for the passage of the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
they
In
can
terms
they
of
can do it now. They can do it now. I came in late to the first Trump administration. We got a lot of stuff done in a short amount of time, but it would have
right.
been nice to be doing it for 4 years.
That's right. Yeah.
Left 3.5 more years.
Yeah. Long time still. Maybe they'll call you back, huh? Who
Ah,
knows?
maybe, maybe.
Yeah. Well, in this case of logistics, another thing you mentioned a few months ago was self-deportation could be a big player, right?
Yeah.
And recently, the administration has come out with the new self-deportation plan, which, you get your flights out of the country basically for free, as I understand.
Right. Yep.
And, it's really way easier if you want to get out of the country that way. How do you
Right.
think this program is going to play out? Do you think it's going to have a massive effect or not really change?
So the answer to that question is going to depend on the other things they do. If people
Okay.
believe this is the easy way and their choice is the easy way or the hard way, we're human beings. We choose the easy way.
So
And
that's a little of the media coming around too, right?
well, that's where the media helps them. All
That's
the
right.
hype
Yeah.
you see, people believe there's a lot more deportation activity going on relative to the size of the population of illegals than is in fact the case.
Yeah.
But this is one of those situations where that works to President Trump's advantage. If people believe that right around the next corner is the ICE agent coming to detain them, and they, on the other hand, have this offer to be paid $1,000 for themselves and each member of their family and get free flights out of the back home, they might pick the easy way. I think one of the key ways to accelerate that choice would be to expand the worksite enforcement and actually prosecute businesses that are hiring illegal aliens, which, by the way, is popular on a bipartisan basis. And there are not many
Really?
things you
Huh.
can find. Yes. Yes, because these people
Interesting.
are
Yeah.
also exploiting illegal aliens, which is where the overlap with otherwise pro illegal immigration leftists happens.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, honestly, it's been my opinion that like the Bush administration and others didn't do this because they're Chamber of Commerce Republicans. They don't want to be busting their buddies. They still want to be invited to all the cocktail parties.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, tough patooties.
Lobbying. Yeah.
You're either going to do the job or you're not. So
Right.
if they start to really accelerate in that space, um, that's why most people come here, right? Yes, there are bad hombres, as the president says, but numerically, most people are coming here uh, to work. And if those opportunities become harder and harder to obtain and they dry up, then people will take that alternative. So,
Yeah.
the answer to your question is to be continued. We'll have to see how things play
Yeah.
out.
I guess that's the answer for many questions I've had, and it's hard to predict. few months ago you were in Chicago and we're discussing, and the table's completely flipped now, and everything changes so fast.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But I was wondering in terms of you talked a little bit about immigration reform, and I was kind of a funny way to put it. Like, let's say the Congress is going to pass, well, only going to pass a single bill on immigration in the next 2 years.
Right.
What do you think would be the single or two most important things that need to be on that bill?
Well, it depends whether that bill is directed at legal immigration or illegal immigration. They're
I'll
very different.
tackle however you want. Like, feel
Yeah,
free.
they're very different subjects. And I think that the best thing we could do on the illegal immigration front is essentially eliminate almost all due process for anybody who can't demonstrate they entered the country legally or
Hmm.
who can't demonstrate that they are presently within the boundaries of a legal visa.
Hmm.
The burden should be on them to prove why they should stay here, not the other way around. That's the single biggest thing that it's due process sounds like a good thing, and it is in the American system, but it is used against us at scale by the open borders crowd and those with an interest in illegal immigration, including, by the way, the cartels in Mexico who have made a killing off of
Yeah.
human trafficking.
Uh-huh.
And there were periods of time during the Biden administration, they were probably making more money trafficking people than drugs, which is
Yeah.
just
Okay.
incredible.
Mhm.
So that would be it on the illegal side. On the legal side,
On the illegal side, real quickly,
yeah.
in terms of the due process, that's something that came up a lot in the debates we had at university. And if you're here like on a visa or you're here legally, you should. What do you think of the due process in those situations?
So first of all, no one in that situation is in the position of a U.S. citizen. They don't have the right to be here. No one but a U.S. citizen has the right, and I'm using the word right very specifically, to
Mm.
be here. It is a
Yeah, it's a
privilege.
privilege. Yeah.
It's a privilege for everyone else,
Okay.
and that needs to be our starting point. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want a set of rules. I already, said earlier, I want to see us beef up and accommodate, by which I mean just do our job correctly and fairly
Mhm.
to those playing by the rules.
Of
So,
course. Yeah.
it's a different story. We'll go back to the Harvard example. Some of the people the Trump administration is removing are here on legal visas, F1 visas, for example.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there should be a specific checklist of process to shorten those visas or end them early. That doesn't mean you should be able to go to court over it. That becomes a slowdown point. And in fact, the court should be kept out of it.
Okay.
But that's very different than if you've overstayed a visa or come across the border illegally in the first place and can't
Yeah.
demonstrate any legal entry at all. And it's important that we offer some process to those who are here legally that we don't to those who are here illegally. It needs to be easier to get rid of people who've broken the law.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Otherwise, there's no reason to obey the law.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So
You were
uh,
saying on the
that's
legal
an
side
important
of the bill.
distinction.
Yeah. You were talking about the legal side of the bill. You were addressing.
Yeah, on the legal
Yeah.
side, I would want to flip the numbers of what is now family immigration with employment immigration,
Mm. Okay.
with along the lines of what you were saying, with an emphasis on those who can contribute economically to the United States. Um, and I don't just mean, filling out large swaths of IT networking positions. I mean the entrepreneurs you're talking about, the people who have studied niche areas that are in demand in the economy and so forth. Now, when I say that, I want to be very careful. I was an engineer. I don't want Americans who put in the work and effort to learn in these STEM areas to be undercut at the
Yeah.
most vulnerable point in their career, right when they graduate. That
Uh-huh.
first job is the hardest, then you prove yourself. But what I do want to see is chain migration, the flip of it, ended entirely. I don't think
Mhm.
anybody who has immigrated here, even legally, should be able to bring anyone other than a spouse or minor children under any
Mhm.
circumstance.
Yeah.
Um, we have opened the doors far too wide for far too long, and we're not assimilating people.
That's
We're
right. Yeah.
we're conceding our sovereignty culturally, and we have for a number of years now, and we need to regain that sovereignty. And part of how we do that is we slow down the legal side, and the point to slow it down is the extended family pieces of it. It's
Gotcha.
it's
Okay.
not the employment side. It's not the individuals playing by the rules, the first person who comes kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're wrapping up pretty quickly here, but I have one last question, and I want to end on a high note, if that's possible. Even higher, if you put it that way. Uh, what's your single biggest hope for the American immigration system for the next, say, 5 years or the next decade? Like, what do you think
Well,
the
I
audience
definitely
should
I think of
know?
it I think of it in long-term terms.
Hmm.
So you're asking 5, 10 plus years, I think is a good way to ask the question. And it's
Yeah.
really that we get back to a balance with respect for the law. Um, it used to be a universally held premise that we were all opposed to illegal immigration. And our
Yeah.
debate was around what should legal immigration look like. And we need to get back to that. I can, I have my own view. There's 330 million views of what legal immigration ought to look like. And that's why we have
Yeah.
a
No.
representative democracy. So we'll come to some compromise about what that is. I think as I mentioned earlier, there's general agreement the system we have now isn't working well for us. So we at least agree that we need to fix it. But we
That's
should
right. Yeah.
also, we need to get back to agreement and understanding that illegal immigration is never acceptable. In the same way that we should be able to agree that violence is never acceptable. Should never be allowed to break the law. That if people don't like the laws, then you change the laws. You don't allow
Of course.
people
Yeah.
to break them. Uh,
Uh-huh.
that goes back to our first principles. It's part of, we're not a
Yeah.
people or a clan or a tribe. We share a core set of constitutional foundational principles, and respect for the rule of law is the thread that ties them all together. And we need to rebuild that thread in the immigration space.
Perfect. Just one final thing that I think would go a long way for the audience here listening to us. Uh, you've been like a lifelong public servant, and for those in the audience that would think of following a career similar to yours, working for government, working for the people of the United States, what's the advice you should give to them?
Well, um, it depends what you want to do. If you want to make policy, that's different than a permanent career position. If you want to protect the border, you can go in the border patrol.
Hmm.
Now their morale was pretty low with a president like Biden who had an open borders policy that violated our own law.
Uh-huh.
Nonetheless, their mission was the same, and so those positions exist. If you want to help make the immigration policy, there's no way around working your way into policy positions can be much more sensitive than a career role.
Yeah.
So pick the subject area you like, study up on it. Um, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go get a job doing something else first. Private sector management experience and non-federal management experience was incredibly valuable to me when I finally entered
Hmm.
the federal government as a leader and a manager to be able to be efficient and effective. So it isn't a one and done. you develop skills, and I would urge you to just undertake a lifelong path of learning. After my law degree, I got another master's in international commerce and policy, and
Yeah.
I've never ever stopped reading history, because there's so much to learn there. And in
Yeah.
America, if you're going to serve in the American government, you ought to be doing at least some of your reading from the founding period.
Oh, of course.
Try
Yeah.
to understand what they were doing, why they were doing it, and how it's still relevant today, because it is. Those are timeless principles, which means they apply all the time, everywhere, all across time. So that's
Beautiful. Yeah.
my suggestion. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest running for office, but
Yeah. There are
that's
other
a high
ways.
stakes
Yeah.
way to get in there. But it's also a pretty rough environment, and can be tough on
Oh, I
families
bet.
and other
Yeah,
things. It's
for
also
sure.
hard to keep other work while you're doing that.
That makes perfect sense. I bet the critical thinkers here, the Chicago Thinker audience, really appreciates the advice. I did, so appreciate
Well,
it.
you're very
Well,
kind. Good
thank
to be
you,
with
Ken.
you.
Thank you very much for being here, and see you soon, man.
Yes, absolutely. Good to be with you, Eduardo.